I'd like to next welcome Wayne Kelso to the stage. Wayne, for those of you that don't know him, is an innovative musical genius. Most of us are familiar with Wayne the performer, but he's also a producer, composer, videographer, and in his spare time, a photographer. You may also know that Wayne has developed and produced the award-winning mobile tour for the Lake of the Woods Museum. He has accompanied a who's who A-list of performers and written scores for many plays and shorts. We're truly lucky to have this world-class artist in our midst, and specifically to us in this event, we're truly fortunate to have him on our team. His talent has taken him all over the world, but I, for one, am most pleased that he's made his way back home. Today, Wayne is going to discuss how he draws inspiration from the sights and sounds of this place that we all share. Please welcome Wayne to the stage.
Well, stories of our own beginnings, they should always start with our mothers. And my mom, Darlene, she was a piano player, piano teacher, and probably could have been an engineer because she could fix anything. And they say that I came in one day when I was about 4 years old and I ran into the piano and said, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to play the wind." And that was my beginning. Felt like carving air. When I was in grade 3, my mom thought I should maybe learn another instrument. So I started looking at album covers and I saw a clarinet and I thought, well, that might be kind of nice to play. My most treasured clarinet recording was a Pete Fountain album, and Pete was an amazing player from New Orleans, and I wore that record out learning every note that he played. The house was filled with amazing music. We had Harry James and the Platters, and Ella Fitzgerald, and Herb Alpert, and Doris Day, and Tommy Dorsey. And we had a reel-to-reel, and there was music playing all the time, even when we slept. But in 1969, the day after my 11th birthday, something terrible happened. My mom died, and everything changed, especially music. But it became a place where I could go and seek her out way past the bar lines. And there she'd be. But 1969, 1970, 1971, there was some amazing music about. 1972, on this very stage, I got to play with Nicky Dubensky in the Purple and White. And a funny thing happened that night. The sheet music was about 9 pages long, and I had them stuck right over there. And I was about to go on stage, and I came out, and I didn't have page 1. So I'm running around trying to find it. Someone made a sign out of it. I kept it. So, my high school friends, Greg Lowe, Andy Carlson, and Robert Lindstrom, they were into jazz. Now, there are people who believe that the symbiotic relationship of water and music, the inexplicable existence of places on our planet where music seems to breathe, Muscle Shoals, the Bayou, the Mississippi River, the Danube, even our own East Coast. I believe that Kenora is also one of those magical places. There's a flavor of swamp jazz that resonates from the depths of our local waters. And as we know, water can teach us many things. And then in grade 11, I discovered Chick Corea. Now, I'd never heard the piano sound like that before, and his command of the instrument would completely mesmerize me. Although I suppose I always thought that I'd become a professional musician, it was Chick that put a face to that dream. So, after high school, I was off to Berkeley and then to Humber to study the jazz masters. Towards the end of my second semester at Humber, I realized that I needed to be playing full time. And in those days, you could join road bands that would tour nonstop with perhaps a week off every 6 months. And there was a sign on the bulletin board at Humber, just unlike this sign, I guess. And it said, "Wanted, keyboard player, guitar player, drummer, bass player, singers." I went, well, that doesn't sound like much of a band. I walked by that sign for about a month and finally got up the courage to make the call, and turned out to be a fellow named Alex Glover. Now, he had been with a band called Canadian Conspiracy in the mid-'70s, and they'd had success, had a record deal with Capitol Records, and Alex was going off on his own at the ripe age of 30. So he wanted to get some young players to join him in his pursuits. So I went down and I auditioned and I got the gig. And off we went to Newfoundland to tighten up, because that's what you did in those days. And we crisscrossed the country back and forth for that first year. And then the second year, we got into the U.S., and we were there for 2 years, playing places like Atlantic City and Nashville and Memphis and St. Louis and Las Vegas. And after 3 years, I felt that it was time to leave. It had been a wild ride, and the experience had been profound for me. It shaped my youthful musical sensibilities and grounded me firmly in realizing what I needed to do to become the player that I imagined that I could be. My last gig with them was in Atlantic City, and I was lucky enough to have recorded one of those nights.
It was raining hard in Frisco. I needed one more fare to make my nights. The lady up ahead waved to flag me down. She got in the lights. We're going to my lady blue. It's a shame your room, your gown in the rain. She just looked out the window. She said 16 Parkside Lane.
So what to do? My friend Greg Lowe was in Winnipeg, doing really well there, and I thought, well, maybe I'll do that. So off I went and landed there and got plugged into the local circuit. And about 9 months deep into that, something very magical happened. Diane Hetherington came to town. Now, Diane was the first Canadian female rock singer, and she was a force. And in those days, though, she was playing in a duo with a piano player and just doing any tune she wanted. So we were playing down in the Marlborough Hotel there in the basement for a 3-week run. It was fabulous. And after she said, hey, why don't you come to Toronto and we'll work together? I said, well, I can do that. So off I went, and we started playing places like Garbo's on Queen Street and the Café de Copen and all these wonderful showrooms, just playing all sorts of music. I did that for about a year. And she wanted to go to New York, and I just wanted to stay in Toronto. But on our last night together at Garbo's, someone in the crowd recorded it. She used to just sit back and let me stretch out, and I'd fly to the moon. No one had ever given me that kind of space before on stage, and it was Diane that got me back sitting again at a real piano, which is where I truly belonged, and it was the beginning of a lifelong study of the art of solo jazz piano playing. Now, before she headed off, she introduced me to a very interesting fellow. Now, his name is Mina E. Mina, and he's an actor and a playwright. And he had a a one-man play with a piano player in tow, and it was based on the works of Charles Bukowski, the beat poet. Very funky piece, and we used to do it in bars. We could do it anywhere, and the Horseshoe Tavern. And Mina had a chance to do a CBC radio drama, a half-hour adaptation of one of the pieces called The Most Beautiful Girl in Town. And CBC wanted to use their own composer, of course, and Mina went to bat for me, and he got me my first writing gig. And this is the very first cue I ever wrote. Mina went off to do some great things. He was in the movie Unforgiven and Eastern Promises, both Academy Award-winning films, and remains one of my closest friends today. Now, the director on that first session, his name's Ken Gass, and Ken's a bit of a Toronto theater icon. He founded the Canrep Theatre in the 60s, and he discovered George Walker, and in the 80s, he was the artistic director at Factory Theatre, and we hit it off on that first session, and so we started doing radio dramas together, and did a bunch for Vanishing Point and Peter Zosky's Morningside. We used to have the plays in the morning there, and then all of the plays that he directed at Factory Theatre, he started hiring me to do the scores, and we've been collaborating ever since. Now, the instruments, the tools that were coming on board at the time it was very, very exciting. And this Greg Lowe used to hate that patch. So, fast forward to 1995, and Diane came back to Toronto and called me up and said, "Hey, let's do a record." She wanted to do a bunch of jazz covers and some original music, and we started working together in my studio in Mississauga and exploring material and arrangement ideas. She was sounding great.
But when the thermometer goes way up and the weather is sizzling hot, Mr. Pants for romance is not. 'Cause it's too dark hot. It's too dark hot. Well, it's too dark hot. So we were
6 months into working together, and it was going great, and something terrible happened again. She got sick. And within a year, she was gone. And I couldn't listen to that, any of that music. So I just put my head down and got into my projects and carried on, as we all do. And then 2008, I got a call, and it was going to be her 50th birthday, and they were going to do a celebration in Winnipeg up at the Pyramid Club, and they wanted me to be a part of it. And I said, sure, that would be great. So off I went, and it was a chance to share those recordings. So I mustered up the courage to go back and revisit the work and pick out the tunes to share with the people attending the event. And I'm happy to say that a handful of those tunes are available on YouTube to listen to and enjoy. Now, I hadn't been to Kenora for quite a time, and I added a few days on the other end to come home, and something magical happened. I found my Michelle, the most beautiful girl in town. And I never left. So Diane, she became one of those people who helped guide me through my own path even after she crossed over. And now I've come full circle and living on the same street where I grew up and still playing the wind. So now I take my microphones out and I try to capture the sonic beauty that surrounds us here. Like the ice in the spring when it yawns and cracks. And this is what I did for a play called Tideline. And I did one this past fall, a play called Helen's Necklace, and I thought it'd be really interesting to have the sounds of beads in it. And I went and visited Bev Harrison. She had a wonderful collection, and went there and sampled shaking them and rolling them in tins and dropping them, and each large palette of sounds, and sounded something like this. And I've been able to connect with some of our local music community and bring some of them into my world. I did a score for a play a few years ago at the Hart House Theatre in Toronto. They were going to do the Days of Wine and Roses, and I thought it strange because Henry Mancini wrote a wonderful score for that, so I was surprised they were looking for someone to write original music for it. But I said, oh, I'll do that. So the play was to be, we started the play we had a big projection screen at the back, and we thought it'd be a great idea to roll black and white credits at the beginning to make it seem as though you were going to be watching a film. And I thought it'd be a great place to include the iconic tune because I felt that was important to include it. And I got Kenora's own Missy Jacobson to record it.
The days of wine and roses, laugh and run away like a child at play through the meadowland toward a closing door, a door marked nevermore that wasn't there before. The lonely night discloses just a passing breeze filled with memories of that golden smile that introduced me to the days of wine and roses and you.
And they loved her. So I'm thankful for the time I've had to explore this fabulous instrument and to be doing something that I don't remember starting. And it's become much like juggling. Every 5 years, you add another ball. And I'll leave you with the famous musical adage that you're only as good as the last note you play. Thank you.